The massive crystalline chamber of the Hegemony High Council sparkled with artificial starlight, its towering walls reflecting the smug satisfaction of the assembled alien dignitaries. Supreme Overseer Valthak, his iridescent scales gleaming with bioluminescent patterns of authority, gestured dismissively at the holographic display of Earth rotating before them. "Observe," he announced, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into the common galactic tongue. A Class 3 civilization, barely able to reach their own satellite. Their most advanced weapons rely on chemical propulsion and crude atomic fission. A ripple of amusement passed through the gathering of the galaxy's most powerful species. In a holding cell 17 levels below, Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force sat in perfect stillness, her dark eyes fixed on the small ventilation duct in the corner of her cell. The Hegemony guards had searched her thoroughly upon capture, removing her powered armor and weapons. They'd even subjected her to multiple bioscans, looking for hidden augmentations or implants. Finding none, they'd classified her as a standard human specimen and left her in a minimum security cell. They hadn't bothered to remove her hair ties. Sarah's apparent serenity masked careful calculation. For 3 days, she had watched the guard rotations, noted the subtle variations in the ambient hum of the station's power grid, and memorized the exact timing of the ventilation system's cleaning cycles. The Hegemony, confident in their technological superiority, had grown complacent. Back in the council chamber, Valthak was continuing his presentation. The humans' greatest weakness is their predictability. They respond to threats with direct force, lacking the sophistication for true strategic warfare. Their capture of one of their military leaders has demoralized them significantly. A junior counselor, their crystalline form refracting the chamber's light, raised an appendage. "But Supreme Overseer, what of the rumors? The unexplained disappearances of our scout ships near their territory." Valthak's bioluminescence pulsed with dismissive patterns. "Mere accidents. Their system is filled with debris from their primitive attempts at space travel. Now, observe our plan for their systematic pacification." The hologram shifted, showing a complex network of planned weapon platforms and control stations around Earth. None of the assembled aliens noticed the small maintenance drone that had paused briefly near one of the chamber's data terminals. In her cell, Sarah remained motionless as the ventilation system began its cleaning cycle. The subtle change in air pressure would last exactly 47 seconds. Her muscles tensed imperceptibly. The guard drone outside her cell continued its predetermined patrol pattern, its sensors detecting nothing amiss from the quiet human prisoner. The day shift supervisor, Kittal, was reviewing security protocols when a minor anomaly caught their attention. A maintenance drone had registered a slight delay in its routine pathway. Kittal's appendages wavered with uncertainty. The delay was within acceptable parameters, but something about it triggered an unfamiliar sensation in their neural clusters. Sarah had learned much during her captivity. The Hegemony's technology was advanced, but it followed rigid patterns. Their AI systems were powerful but inflexible. Most importantly, they had fundamental gaps in their understanding of human psychology. They analyzed everything through the lens of their own evolutionary history, unable to grasp the unique adaptability that Earth's harsh environment had bred into humanity. "The subjugation will begin in 3 planetary rotations," Valthak announced to the Council. "Our analysis shows a 99.8% chance of success, with minimal casualties on either side. The humans will be given the opportunity to serve as a protectorate species, maintaining their limited autonomy under our guidance." In the holding cells, the guard drone registered a minor power fluctuation. Its protocols dictated a standard diagnostic sequence, temporarily diverting power from non-essential systems, including the cell's force field, for exactly 2.3 seconds. Sarah Chen hadn't earned her command through brute force or political maneuvering. She had risen through the ranks because she understood something fundamental about warfare. True victory often came not from overwhelming strength, but from being consistently underestimated. As the council meeting concluded, Valthak received an automated notification. The human prisoner had requested her daily nutrition packet. He felt a surge of satisfaction. Even their military leaders accepted the inevitability of hegemony rule, focused on basic survival rather than futile resistance. The first alarm sounded 4 hours later. By then, Sarah Chen was no longer in her cell. The neural cluster of a reprogrammed maintenance drone contained a complete recording of the council's meeting, and throughout the station's supposedly secure networks, a virus written in Earth's primitive binary code was spreading, its pattern so simple that the hegemony's advanced cybersecurity systems had dismissed it as routine system noise. The galaxy was about to learn an important lesson about humanity. They weren't predictable, they weren't primitive, and they were anything but harmless. Supreme Overseer Valthak would later reflect that perhaps the greatest irony was how they had misinterpreted human silence. They had seen submission in stillness, weakness in patience, and acceptance in quiet observation. They should have remembered an old human saying, one that Sarah Chen knew well. Still waters run deep. Chaos erupted through the hegemony station as emergency protocols activated in cascading waves. Supreme Overseer Valthak's bioluminescent patterns flashed with rage as report after report flooded in. The human prisoner hadn't simply escaped. She had turned the station's own systems against them. All huddled in their maintenance alcove, neural clusters pulsing with confusion as they watched security forces rush past. The supervisor had been reviewing logs when the first systems began to fail. Environmental controls went haywire in specific sections, forcing evacuations. Communication arrays transmitted garbage data, overwhelming channels. And through it all, Catal couldn't shake the feeling that there was a pattern they weren't seeing. Find her. Valthak's orders reverberated through the command center. How does a primitive manage this level of sabotage? Where are my elite guards? The elite guards in question lay unconscious in various maintenance shafts, disabled not by advanced weapons, but by precisely applied force to vulnerable points in their exoskeletons. Sarah Chen had spent her captivity studying not just the station's systems, but the biology of her captors. Hull's instruments detected movement in a nearby conduit. Drawing their maintenance tool, they approached cautiously. "Identify yourself," they clicked, trying to keep their appendages from trembling. "You noticed the drone anomaly earlier." Sarah's voice came from the shadows. "You have good instincts." The others dismissed it. Kittle's sensor arrays widened. "You are the human commander. I should alert security. But you haven't, because you've seen the truth about the hegemony, haven't you? How they treat lesser species." The maintenance supervisor's appendages wavered. It was true. Hall had witnessed countless acts of casual cruelty, justified by claims of superiority. Their own species had been elevated generations ago, turned into perpetual servants. "They will find you," Catal warned. Sarah emerged partially from the shadows, her dark eyes reflecting the emergency lights. "No, they won't, because their entire understanding of human capabilities is wrong. They think we're primitive because we still use simple tools and basic technology. They don't understand that complexity isn't always strength." As if to emphasize her point, another series of alarms blared. The virus she had introduced wasn't attacking the station's critical systems. It was simply introducing minor errors into routine operations. The hegemony's AI, designed to handle complex threats, couldn't adapt to something so basic. "Why are you telling me this?" Catal asked. "Because you're different. You question things. And because I need your help." In the command center, Valthak was reaching a breaking point. The station's advanced defense systems were useless against an enemy who understood their fundamental weaknesses. Reports came in of security forces found incapacitated, of critical data copied and corrupted, of systems behaving erratically. Supreme Overseer, one of his subordinates, approached, scales dulled with stress. "We've detected unauthorized access to the quantum communication array. The human. She's broadcasting." Valthak's bioluminescence flared with alarm. "Stop her. Lock down all communications." But it was too late. Throughout the sector, Other subjugated species were receiving transmissions, not complex technical data or military secrets, but something far more dangerous. Proof that the mighty hegemony could be outsmarted by a supposedly primitive species. Kittel made their decision. The primary reactor core, they clicked softly. Its safety protocols are overly complex. A simple power surge in the right place. Sarah nodded. Show me. Together, they moved through the station's maintenance networks. Kittel watched in fascination as the human commander used their tools in ways their designers had never intended. She didn't try to hack the advanced security systems. She simply bypassed them using mechanical means. Your species, Kittel observed, you adapt quickly. We had to, Sarah replied as she worked. Earth isn't kind to creatures who can't adapt. Every tool, every technology we developed came from necessity. We learned to use whatever we had available. The station shuddered as another system failed. In the command center, Valthak received a priority message from the Hegemony High Council. The humans weren't just fighting back. Other species were beginning to resist. The carefully maintained illusion of hegemony invincibility was cracking. The reactor core is through here, Kittel indicated. But the security. Sarah smiled grimly. They're expecting someone to try to destroy it. We're not going to do that. We're going to do something much simpler. She reached into her hair and removed the seemingly decorative ties. Kittel's sensors detected an unusual crystalline structure within them. What are those? Something we developed after studying crystals like the ones your council chambers are made of. We may be primitive, but we learn fast. The reactor core's housing lit up with emergency indicators as Sarah placed the crystals at specific points. She wasn't trying to destroy it. She was changing its resonance frequency, forcing it to operate at reduced capacity. Why not simply disable it? Kittel asked. Because this way, they can't just switch to backup power. The entire station will remain operational, but at 60% capacity. Not enough to maintain their precious complex systems, but enough to keep life support running. Valthak felt the change immediately as the station's power levels dropped. One by one, the advanced systems the hegemony relied on began to fail, unable to function with the reduced energy flow. And through it all, the simple virus continued its work, spreading confusion and doubt. Sarah Chen had done more than escape. She had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to understand and exploit the weaknesses that came with overcomplexity. The breaking point had been reached, and in the chaos that followed, the first cracks in the hegemony's power began to show. The hegemony worship eternal dominion hung in space like a twisted crystal cathedral, its hull gleaming with energy patterns that had struck fear into countless civilizations. Now those patterns flickered erratically as the ship's captain received increasingly desperate reports from across the sector. Another supply convoy lost. First Strike Officer Engsthill reported, their crystalline form dulled with stress. The attacks follow no logical pattern. Our predictive algorithms are useless. The ship's captain, a veteran of 100 campaigns, felt an unfamiliar sensation, doubt. In the 3 weeks since the human commander's escape, everything had changed. The hegemony's carefully maintained order was unraveling, not through force, but through 1,000 small acts of defiance. Somewhere in the darkness of space, Sarah Chen smiled as she reviewed tactical data with her growing coalition. The commandeered hegemony scout ship she'd escaped in had become the nucleus of an impromptu resistance fleet. Species that had lived under hegemony control for generations were finally seeing hope. The Vrex mining colonies have joined us, Kittel announced, their maintenance tools now modified into impressive tactical interfaces. Their knowledge of resource extraction points will be invaluable. Sarah nodded, studying the holographic display before her. The hegemony's supply lines were vast but vulnerable, dependent on complex scheduling algorithms that assumed absolute control of their territory. Show me the patrol patterns near the Centauri border. A Marax warrior, their feline features scarred from years of forced labor, leaned forward. The hegemony ships are increasing their escort strength. They learn. Too late, Sarah replied. They still think like conquerors, not survivors. Their adaptations are predictable because they can't imagine losing their advantage. She pointed to a seemingly random series of points in space. Here, here, and here. Their new patrol patterns create periodic gaps in coverage. The assembled alien resistance leaders studied the tactical display with growing appreciation. Humans weren't just good at exploiting weaknesses, they excelled at finding patterns that others missed. Back on the Eternal Dominion, the captain received a priority transmission from High Command. The message was encrypted with protocols so complex that they required dedicated quantum processors to decode. By the time the captain realized the transmission had been compromised, it was too late. Sarah's resistance fleet struck with precision that would have been impossible without the intercepted data. Small, agile ships appeared from seemingly empty space, using the hegemony's own blind spots against them. They didn't attempt to destroy the massive warship. Instead, they targeted specific systems with surgical precision. Status report. The captain demanded as alarms blared throughout the ship. Multiple systems failing. Angstful reported, their crystalline form vibrating with distress. They're not using energy weapons. They're using modified mining charges. Our shields are calibrated for military-grade attacks. The human approach to warfare continued to baffle the hegemony. Instead of developing counters to advanced technology, they simply found ways to make existing tools work in unexpected ways. Mining charges, designed to break up asteroids, proved devastating against shields designed to stop energy weapons. On her command ship, Sarah coordinated the attack with calm efficiency. Each strike was calculated not just for tactical advantage, but for psychological impact. The mighty Eternal Dominion wasn't being destroyed. It was being systematically humiliated. Commander, Kital called out, their sensors detecting new signals, 3 more hegemony battle groups approaching. Sarah's expression remained unchanged. Right on schedule. Signal the Vrex mining ships. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The Vrex ships, traditionally used for asteroid mining, activated their magnetic tractor beams in a precisely choreographed sequence. The beams intersected in space, creating a web of gravitational distortions that played havoc with the hegemony ship's navigation systems. They're using industrial equipment as weapons, the captain of the Eternal Dominion realized with horror. How do we fight an enemy that turns everything into a weapon? The answer, as the hegemony was learning, was that you didn't. Humanity's greatest military innovation wasn't a new weapon or shield. It was their ability to see potential in everything around them. As the battle unfolded, Sarah received word that more species were joining the resistance. The hegemony's careful hierarchical structure was becoming its greatest weakness. Every subjugated race had knowledge of different systems and technologies, and under human guidance, they were learning to use that knowledge in ways the hegemony had never anticipated. You're changing everything, Kital observed as they watched another hegemony ship retreat, its systems in disarray. Not through superior technology, but through superior imagination. Sarah's dark eyes reflected the tactical displays surrounding her. That's what they never understood about humanity. We don't need to be the strongest or the most advanced. We just need to be the most adaptable. The resistance fleet regrouped, their numbers growing as word of their successes spread. The hegemony's response remained predictable. They sent bigger ships, stronger weapons, more complex defense systems. They couldn't comprehend that every increase in complexity just gave their opponents more tools to work with. As the Eternal Dominion limped away from the battlefield, its captain finally understood what they were facing. The humans weren't fighting a war of technology or resources. They were fighting a war of ideas. And in that kind of war, the species that had survived on a planet that constantly tried to kill them had an advantage that no amount of advanced technology could match. The tables hadn't just turned, they had been completely reinvented, and the galaxy was watching. The hegemony High Council chamber had lost its luster. The once pristine crystalline walls were dulled by constant emergency lighting, and the assembled leaders' bioluminescent patterns betrayed their growing fear. Supreme Overseer Valthak faced the projection of Earth's solar system with growing dread. "Impossible," he whispered, watching as another battle group went dark. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were revealing capabilities that should have been far beyond their technological level. Supreme Overseer, a junior counselor, interrupted, their crystalline form vibrating with urgency. "We're detecting unusual activity throughout Earth's system. They're moving the asteroids." The holographic display updated, showing what appeared to be a coordinated dance of space rocks. The humans had taken the primitive mining techniques they used in the Resistance and scaled them up dramatically. Entire asteroid fields were being repositioned, creating an ever-shifting maze of natural barriers and ambush points. In Earth orbit, Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned EDF Defiance, a ship that embodied humanity's rapid adaptation to space warfare. Its hull was a patchwork of Earth technology and salvaged hegemony systems, but it moved with a grace that belied its hybrid nature. "Status report," she called out, watching as Earth's defense grid came fully online. The grid wasn't the elegant energy web the hegemony had planned. Instead, it was a pragmatic combination of orbital platforms, converted satellites, and repurposed civilian infrastructure. "All sectors reporting ready, Commander," her tactical officer reported. "The civilian mining fleets have completed their assignments. Operation Thunderbolt is ready to proceed." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The hegemony had dismissed Earth's mining operations as primitive, never realizing that humans had spent generations practicing how to move large objects through space with precision. Now that practice would prove decisive. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Let's show them what humanity can really do." Across Earth's solar system, hidden facilities sparked to life. The hegemony's intelligence had identified Earth's military bases and installations, but they had ignored the countless civilian operations that humans had quietly militarized. Every mining outpost became a fortress. Every research station a weapon platform. Multiple signatures detected. The hegemony flagship sensors blared warnings as human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the system. They didn't use advanced cloaking technology. They had simply waited in the sensor shadows of asteroids and debris, using the natural cover of space itself. "They're everywhere," a hegemony commander reported, their voice tight with disbelief. "They're ships. They're not following any known design protocols. Each one is different." This was humanity's true strength revealed. While the hegemony built standardized fleets of identical ships, humans had adapted each vessel to its specific role. Cargo haulers became carriers, survey ships became stealth scouts, and mining vessels became siege weapons. The battle that followed would reshape galactic warfare forever. Humanity didn't fight with elegant formations or complex battle algorithms. They fought with controlled chaos, using the very environment of space as a weapon. Asteroids became both shields and projectiles. Solar radiation was reflected and focused by hastily constructed mirror arrays. Even space debris was turned into deadly clouds of shrapnel. "They're not just fighting us," Valthak realized as he watched another battle group fall into disarray. "They're fighting with the universe itself as their ally." Sarah coordinated the defense from the Defiance, her calm demeanor masking the intense concentration required to orchestrate such an unconventional battle. The ship's hybrid systems allowed her to communicate seamlessly with both the advanced alien technology and Earth's more robust conventional equipment. "They're falling back to their primary staging area," Catal reported, their sensor arrays tracking the hegemony fleet's movements. "Their formation is breaking down." "Of course it is," Sarah replied. "Their combat doctrine relies on perfect coordination. Take that away, make them fight as individuals, and their advantage disappears." The hegemony commanders struggled to adapt. Their ships were more advanced, their weapons more powerful, but they couldn't match the sheer improvisation of human tactics. Every time they developed a counter to one human strategy, They faced 3 new ones. This isn't possible, a hegemony admiral declared as their flagship systems crashed under a barrage of repurposed mining lasers. They're using industrial equipment as weapons. But it was possible, and it was happening across the entire solar system. Humanity had spent its entire history learning to use whatever tools were available. Now, with access to advanced alien technology, they weren't just copying it. They were reimagining its very purpose. The Defiance led a charge through the heart of the hegemony formation, its hybrid systems confusing their targeting computers. Behind it came a wave of ships that defied conventional military doctrine. Civilian vessels turned warships, each modified and upgraded in ways that made them unpredictable. "Commander," Katal's voice held a note of awe. "The other resistance cells are reporting similar successes across hegemony space. Your tactics, they're being adapted and improved upon by every species that was under their control." Sarah nodded, watching as another hegemony battle group retreated in disarray. That's the final lesson they needed to learn about humanity. We don't just adapt. We teach others to adapt too. Every species has potential. They just needed to be shown how to use it. The battle for Earth's solar system wouldn't be the end of the conflict, but it marked a turning point that couldn't be reversed. Humanity had revealed itself not just as a capable defender, but as a catalyst for change throughout the galaxy. As the hegemony forces retreated in disarray, Valthak finally understood their fatal error. They had judged humanity by their technology level, never realizing that technology alone wasn't what made a species formidable. It was the mind that wielded it, the creativity that repurposed it, and the will that drove its evolution. The age of hegemony dominance was ending, not with a superior force, but with the unleashing of potential they had never imagined existed. The Great Hall of the Galactic Conclave bore little resemblance to the hegemony's crystalline chambers. Representatives from 100 species gathered in a space that celebrated diversity, rather than enforcing uniformity. At its center stood Supreme Overseer Valthak, his once proud bioluminescence dim and subdued, facing the assembled delegates of a transformed galaxy. "The hegemony," he announced, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his clicks and whistles, formally acknowledges its defeat and surrenders unconditionally to the Allied Species Coalition. Commander Sarah Chen watched from her position among Earth's delegation, her expression neutral but her dark eyes alert. The past 3 months had seen the complete dismantling of the hegemony's power structure, not through wholesale destruction, but through a systematic exposure of its fundamental weaknesses. "The terms of surrender are unique," a Vrex representative announced, their mining-adapted appendages now bearing marks of military service. "The hegemony will not be destroyed or subjugated as they once subjugated others. Instead, they will learn." Kittel, now serving as a liaison between former hegemony worlds and the coalition, stepped forward. Their maintenance tools had evolved into sophisticated diplomatic interfaces, symbolic of how many species had transformed their roles in the new galactic order. "The human concept of rehabilitation," Kittel explained, "has proven more effective than punishment. The hegemony's expertise and technology will be preserved, but their philosophy must change." Valthak's scales flickered with what might have been relief. The humans had surprised them one final time, not with violence, but with mercy, a mercy tempered by wisdom and pragmatism. Sarah rose to address the assembly. Her simple Earth Defense Force uniform a stark contrast to the exotic biological and technological displays around her. "The galaxy is entering a new era," she began, her voice carrying the weight of hard-won experience. "One where advancement is measured not by technological superiority, but by the ability to adapt, cooperate, and grow." The assembled delegates listened intently. Many had witnessed firsthand how humanity's approach to warfare and problem-solving had transformed their own societies. The rigid hierarchies of the past were giving way to more flexible, adaptive structures. "Our victory," Sarah continued, "wasn't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. It was won because we showed everyone their own potential. Every species has unique strengths, perspectives, and capabilities. The hegemony's mistake was trying to force everyone into the same mold. A Marax warrior, their ceremonial armor now incorporating elements of human design, growled in agreement. They taught us to fear creativity. Humans taught us to embrace it. The evidence of this transformation was visible throughout the gathered species. Mining tools modified into defensive systems, commercial technologies repurposed for new applications. Every species had begun adapting and innovating in their own unique ways. The formal articles of the coalition, Catal announced, established principles rather than rigid structures. Each member species will maintain its autonomy while contributing to the common good. The humans call it unity through diversity. Valthak stepped forward again, his movements hesitant. "We never understood," he admitted, addressing Sarah directly. "We saw your use of simple tools as primitive. We didn't realize that true advancement lies in how you use what you have, not just in having more powerful technology." Sarah nodded, remembering the holding cell where this had all begun. The universe is too vast and varied for any one approach to be supreme. The moment you believe you've reached the peak of development is the moment you begin to decline. The assembly chamber hummed with energy as representatives discussed the implementation of the new order. The hegemony's vast networks of technology and infrastructure were being repurposed, not destroyed. Their complex systems were being simplified, made more robust and adaptable. Commander Chen, a junior delegate, approached, their crystalline form similar to the hegemony's but somehow more vibrant. "There are rumors. They say Earth knew about the hegemony long before first contact, that you were preparing all along." Sarah smiled slightly. "We suspected we weren't alone. So we prepared not by trying to match hypothetical alien technology, but by becoming as adaptable as possible. Every challenge Earth threw at us, natural disasters, climate change, resource limitations, taught us something valuable." The delegate's crystal facets shifted thoughtfully. "You turned your planet's harshness into strength." "We turned everything into strength," Sarah corrected. "That's what the hegemony never understood. They saw we didn't have their technology and assumed we were primitive. They never asked why we chose different paths of development." As the formal proceedings concluded, Sarah stood with Catal on an observation deck, watching ships of various species moving through space in new, more efficient patterns developed through collaboration. "It's remarkable," Catal observed. "Every species that was under hegemony control is advancing rapidly, but in completely different ways." Sarah nodded. "Because they're finally free to develop according to their own nature and needs. The Vreks are revolutionizing space mining. The Marax are combining their warrior traditions with new strategies. Even former hegemony worlds are finding their own paths." "And humans?" Catal asked. "What will your species do now?" Sarah watched as a converted mining ship demonstrated a new technique for asteroid manipulation, teaching others who had once been enemies. "What we've always done: adapt, learn, teach, and make sure no one species ever again mistakes technological superiority for true advancement." The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if reflecting the unleashed potential of countless species, finally free to evolve in their own ways. The galaxy had learned its lesson about underestimating seemingly primitive species. But more importantly, it had learned that true strength comes not from domination, but from the endless capacity to adapt, improve, and grow. The price of underestimation had been the fall of an empire. The reward was a galaxy awakening to its full potential, guided by a species that had turned adversity itself into its greatest teacher.